Welcome to the Fantasy Football Game Plan. We're going to do a quick review of Week 3 DraftKings, and then we're going to jump right into a Week 4 rundown for the main slate. Hit subscribe and drop a comment with your favorite plays for Week 4. We're down to 11 games this week. We've got 2 Monday night games, and we've got a Sunday game in Ireland at 9:30 in the morning, taking games away from the main slate. And now that we've got week 3 behind us, we have lots of information. Quentin, how are you feeling about what we thought we would see this season?
Yeah, we have plenty of surprises. We are already 17% of the way through the season. No one thought that Quentin Johnston could catch and Brian Thomas Jr. couldn't. So we have a couple surprises. I wanted to review some players that I was going through where the projections have just not caught up, either positively or negatively. Here's a group of players that every single week have been above their current projection for this week. Basically, either they're going to have their worst game of the season so far, or they should beat their projection. For quarterback, we only have Lamar Jackson. For running
That's
back,
amazing.
yeah, and he has already very high projections, so he has just been killing it so far. For running back, we have James Cook, Travis Etienne, and J.K. Dobbins. For wide receiver, we have Odunze, Quentin Johnston, Keenan Allen, Tyquan Thornton, Emeka Ibuka, and then for tight end, we have Dalton Kincaid. From that list, it's been a lot of those early season surprises. Who do you think is the most likely mirage of this group? They're just showing up for the beginning stretch.
Yeah, I guess I'm going to have to go Keenan Allen or Tyquan Thornton. I feel like most of Tyquan Thornton's production came in week 3. I
Yeah.
don't know how far ahead he is, but week 3 was the one that really got him probably pretty far ahead. He's been on my consistent under bet list, and I did have an under on him last week that broke my parlay. So hopefully it's him, but he is definitely emerging as a wide receiver while everyone else is gone.
Yeah, he's about the only person left, and he's been benefiting from a couple long touchdowns in the past couple weeks. We do expect to see a lot of variability in these wide receivers. A lot of these have caught more touchdowns than expected, especially like Odunze and Johnston. But they do seem a little bit of a level up this year from where they were last year. And
Yeah,
then
they do.
here is a list of players who have not met their current projections for any of the weeks this season. So for quarterbacks, CJ Stroud and Cam Ward. Running backs, we have some heavy hitters: Saquon, Josh Jacobs, Chase Brown, Ashton Genty, and RJ Harvey. For wide receivers, Justin Jefferson, Brian Thomas Jr., Lad McConkey, Terry McLaurin, Calvin Ridley, and Jerry Jeudy have all not hit their projections every single week. And then Brock Bowers, too, for the tight end. Who do you see bouncing back? This is a incredible amount of talent here. It's amazing that we haven't seen these players get going.
This is kind of crazy because I feel like this is most of our round 1 draft picks are sitting here on this list. So who is going to bounce back? Probably somebody who's not hurt, like Brock Bowers. I keep thinking Bowers is going to do it. The Raiders have really let me down. I've been kind of thinking through the team list that I'm most surprised and disappointed in. And the Raiders, their whole team is kind of filtering to the top, which is going to be funny because the Raiders game is the one that we're going to be all over when we get to it on this list. Not giving a hint of too much of what we like this week, but there you go. So I like, Ashton Genty has been a huge disappointment. Saquon, he could definitely bounce. He's probably the most likely to bounce, I think, on this list who could
Yeah,
hit his numbers.
Saquon and Josh
But
Jacobs feel like they're inevitable. They're gonna have that breakthrough week.
yeah, so many others either have a personal injury that we didn't know they were dealing with or that they had in preseason or the first week of the season, like Brian Thomas Jr. dealing with the wrist injury. And I don't like to mess with the injuries that occur the first week of the season and then you're trying to play hurt the rest of the season.
Yeah, that's true. So you were talking about the Raiders letting you down, but for others,
Yeah,
their fantasy projections just haven't been predictable.
they have not. So let's take a look at what won week 3 in the Millie Maker on DraftKings. And somebody stacked Geno Smith, Trey Tucker, Brock Bowers. That was the stack. There was no bring back on the other side in that game that the Raiders lost to Washington. So that was a stack that did it. I'm super impressed that this person stayed completely away from CeeDee Lamb, which is what killed me last week on Daily Fantasy. I had CeeDee Lamb everywhere in my bets. He was just everywhere, and he crushed my week. Crushed it in a bad way. He ended my week early when he went out of that game. Any surprises on this lineup that you have?
Well, so we called the Jordan Mason free square. He showed up, and I think he was very common in lineups. But it is just amazing to me that this Raiders stack worked. The game was 24-41, and somehow the team with 24 points was the winning stack. So kind of abnormal there. You could have also gotten away with some of the backup quarterback plays. Mariota is really good for his price. And then a lot of these defenses scored, so you had to have one of those valuable defenses to really place
You
in these
did.
lineups.
Yeah, that's a good point. Is this person had the Vikings defense at 30 points. I don't know. I didn't actually look through too many defenses this week to see if we've got any potential 30s sitting out there, but I guess whoever's playing the Bengals, no wait, the Bengals are on
They're
Monday
off.
night, so we don't have to worry about them.
Yeah.
I want to go through the top 10 performers for last week because one of the things that I like to look at is I feel like that players are more likely to repeat a top performance if they've ever had a top performance. So it may not be week to week, but we'll start there. And for the flex players, the top 10 last week were Trey Tucker at 43.9 points, Jonathan Taylor, David Montgomery, Hunter Henry, Mark Andrews, Jahmyr Gibbs, Cortland Sutton, Jordan Mason, Nico Collins, and AJ Brown. Who do you like from that list of 10 to be in next week's top 10?
Yeah, it's a really good point because I feel like these top 10, there's only a certain amount of players in the league that have access to be such a valuable option. So it's really promising seeing Jordan Mason here in his first week as the true bell cow running back. So if we have multiple games without Aaron Jones, I really like Jordan Mason and going back to him in the future, even if his price is raised.
Yeah, he's not there this week because he's off playing in Ireland. But I would like to go back to him. The ones that I'm drawn to here are Trey Tucker, Hunter Henry. Those are two that I definitely feel like we can see in the top 10 next week as well. I have maybes for Mark Andrews, Nico Collins, and we finally saw AJ Brown show up.
We did. They remembered how to pass whenever nothing was working.
They were forced to.
Yeah.
On the top quarterbacks last week, let's take a quick look at those. And we've got the top 7 here. Only the top 7 finished above 20 points. And you will notice that they all have something pretty much in common, which is their running ability and their rushing. The only one that didn't is the one that was in the Millionaire Maker contest lineup, and that's Geno Smith. And he only had 2 rush attempts, but he still threw for 3 touchdowns. Who do you like out of this list? Anyone standing out?
So this is Caleb Williams multiple. I think it's the second time in like the top 5 quarterbacks for the weeks. It's definitely working with Ben Johnson. It definitely looks sloppy just watching the Bears games, and they still have room to improve. But it is promising that we just have access to the ceiling that we didn't have last year.
Yeah, that's true. All right. Let's go ahead and jump into our week 4 games and give those a quick run through. We're going to start off with the Indianapolis Colts at the Los Angeles Rams. Colts are undefeated. A large part of that is credit to Jonathan Taylor, who was number 2 on our list from last week. How do you like this game?
It all kind of starts with quarterbacks for me, and I don't really like Daniel Jones for stacking in this game. I just haven't really trusted him. Especially, I think this will be the game they're pushed the most. They've been in friendly game scripts for the most part. They've kind of beat up on Miami and Tennessee for 2 of those weeks, and then the Rams should have won. I can't really trust Stafford. Do you think he could be valuable for a stack?
I don't think he's valuable as a stack. We saw that you pretty much want to go with some quarterback who has some rushing ability, and that's not Matthew Stafford. He's good, he's dependable, but in a tournament lineup, he's not the quarterback that you want. Daniel Jones has that ability. I don't necessarily like him in this game. I feel like the game script here is we might get to actually see what happens when the Colts are behind and they have to catch up. And maybe they're going to let Daniel Jones throw it 40 times. I don't know. I have not seen that Steichen wants to do that with his quarterback, so I'm out that for that reason on Daniel Jones. He's probably going to have to run though.
Yeah, I agree. And I kind of like some of the passing options. Going back to Warren, if they have to pass more, and especially against this Rams defense, that's very zone heavy. I do like Warren. I do like Pittman. I think they're both kind of too cheap. And then you have the two star running or wide receivers against for the Rams. So Puka and Devontae, they still are kind of underperforming, even though they've been great so far. Like Puka does not even have a receiving touchdown. He has that one rushing touchdown, but he's still wide receiver 1 on the year so far.
That's crazy. I do like the Rams side of it. It's just not the game that I think. I don't know. Maybe it's going to be great. Maybe it's going to be the shootout that I'm not envisioning. But I feel like maybe we see the Rams get up early, and then we see a lot of Kyren Williams.
One thing, yeah, I'm very interested in Kyren Williams because I kind of like this approach that maybe it fails or maybe it's just distributed enough that no one's key for your lineups. But Kyren could be that one piece that, if this game fails, still stands out. If you're just looking at like season long stats, the Colts rushing defense is going to look really good. They're top 10 in rushing yards allowed, but that's
Yeah.
because they've been ahead the entire time. They also haven't played any really good running backs yet. So they're actually the third worst on like an EPA per rush basis, but they just no one's rushing against them because they're always behind.
Yeah.
They've been in the lead.
Exactly. I think we're tending to forget the games that the Colts have played. And this one's going to be very interesting to see what they actually have and if they are one of those top teams. Back to Jonathan Taylor. The only way I get on board with Jonathan Taylor is that if he is worth 35 points, then why aren't we taking Puka and Adams? Because Stafford's going to have to be chucking it if Jonathan Taylor's worth that much.
Yeah, I
So
do like that. Where
you could definitely do that, but the only way you're going with Jonathan Taylor, in my opinion, is if you're also going with Puka and Devontae Adams.
it is going to be interesting. This is probably the best pass rush that the Colts have played. And so, how do they protect Daniel Jones? How do they give him quick options to get the ball out of his hand?
That's a
Overall, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point, and then it does make me slightly interested because he might be running,
hmm
and I like him more when he's running.
Overall, I think I'm kind of leaning towards just Kyren Williams here and then get out. I think he's a pretty good value when he's a favorite at home and at 6,300. I kind of want to pay up for the running backs this week.
All right, well, let's move on. We've got Baltimore at Kansas City, 1-2 teams that I didn't see coming. I kind of expected it from Kansas City, but not Baltimore. Baltimore is favored by 2.5, over-unders 48.5. Baltimore has scored 40 points twice and 30 points in their other game, but Kansas City tends to keep the scores low. What
They do.
game script are you seeing here? And do you like Lamar or Patrick Mahomes?
I think Baltimore might keep on scoring 40 points, and I think Kansas City might keep their own score low. I kind of think Baltimore is just going to crush here. And I don't really think Kansas City has the firepower to keep up with all their wide receiver injuries. So I like them to get revenge on some of their bad losses, that kind of inexcusable loss meltdown to the Bills, and then just getting kind of bullied by the Lions on Monday. I think that they kind of show that they are one of the top teams, and Kansas City is not this week.
Yeah, I I'm kind of wanting that to be the game script that happens. I think we should be looking at getting Lamar maybe into a few more of our lineups because if they are crushing, Lamar's going to be heavily involved and probably Derrick Henry.
Yeah,
Do you like
I
him?
I'm very curious on how the ownership comes out for Derrick Henry. If he's not heavily owned, because he really hasn't been that good the past couple weeks. He was awesome in week 1, but he's definitely disappointed for you paying up for him the past couple weeks. So I like him as a tournament option. I don't think a lot of people are going to pay up to go to Derrick Henry, especially against the Chiefs on the road. And we know that
Yeah.
he can just easily go for 150 and 2 touchdowns if it's his game. So I think he's an interesting option. I also think they'll probably heavily work in Zay Flowers, who was kind of non-existent against the Lions. And they just didn't have the ball too much, but I think they'll recognize that that was a problem and get him the ball as kind of their wide receiver one.
Yeah, it definitely was a problem, and they weren't passing to their wide receivers. They were all over Mark Andrews, and we have to look at Mark Andrews a little bit more because at 4,300, he might be a bargain in that lineup as well. This game just confuses me a little bit because the strengths of the defense and the strengths of the offenses don't match up. You can run against Baltimore, but Kansas City doesn't have any running game to run against Baltimore, and if they're down, they won't be doing that anyway.
Yep.
Who else for tight ends, wide receivers, running backs do you like? Would you
From this
want to take a
game,
chance, yeah, on a running back here, or are you just paying up for your running
yeah,
backs
I
this
think I
week?
like Henry. Nothing on the Chiefs really for the running it back, just because Pacheco hasn't really looked good, and Hunt is also kind of old at this point. I think Juju could have a good game. They need someone reliable to go to. Baltimore plays heavy zone, and he's in the right spot where Mahomes needs him. And Kelsey really used to be that outlet, and he hasn't been that outlet so far this season. So maybe we see Juju if Casey's actually able to put up some points. But I don't think Tyquan Thornton will probably have a third long touchdown in a row.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I like that Juju call though, because at 3,800, he had 9.5 points last week. So at 3,800, if he gets in the end zone, he pays for himself.
Yeah.
That could be where we go. All right, let's move on to Chicago at the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders are favored by 1 and the over under is 48. This
Are you
is probably my
surprised
favorite game.
that the
I
Raiders
am
are
surprised. Yeah.
favored?
Yeah,
Me
but
too.
they're both winning too. And Chicago just beat up on the Cowboys without CD Lamb.
Yeah.
Eh, I think we're just being more impressed by that than maybe we should be. But Caleb Williams has looked good.
He has. Caleb Williams has looked very good. He's kind of done it in a variety of ways. In the first couple weeks, he was rushing a little bit more. Last week, he wasn't rushing as much, but he still threw for 4 touchdowns, and the offense just looked like it was kind of clicking a little bit better. So I really like his price tag at 5,800, and we'll kind of talk about some stacking options later. Do you think Gino on the other side of the ball? He came through last week in that millionaire
He
maker,
did.
but you're cutting it close with a quarterback that doesn't run.
You are cutting it close with a quarterback that doesn't run. I probably prefer Caleb Williams over Geno Smith, but I do love this game. This is the game that I think has the potential to go crazy. Both of the defenses are in the lower third, and they both have offenses that can move the ball. One of the things that I added into our charts this week, I don't know if you noticed it, is the salary change. So I wanted to quickly see if DraftKings had raised or lower prices on anybody. And Romo Dunze took the biggest jump this week in his salary. They bumped him up $1,000, even though he only had 15 points last week. Are they trying to tell us something?
That is pretty surprising. I mean, he still had like 62 yards and a touchdown, but he didn't really capitalize on his 7 targets. He is getting true wide receiver one usage, so he's finally being priced like it. So you're not getting a discount, but I think it's staying. I think he will continue to be the number one target. I'm really interested in Luther Burden too. We finally saw him get on the field, and I actually out targeted DJ Moore. DJ Moore was getting some rushing attempts to get him involved, but do you think Luther Burden has any staying power in this offense?
I don't think we see him repeat what he did last week. I think that those are going to be hit and miss, and I think it is Romo Dunze. He's the number one for Chicago, and he's going to be looked at first. It's going to just depend on the matchups and who's getting open. But I like Odunze better than Luther Burton. How do you feel about it?
I like Luther Burden if you want to take a shot. It was promising to see as a rookie in week 3. He's already getting plays where he's like drawn up and like that flea flicker was designed for him to catch it. So it's very promising. And that slot wide receiver for Ben Johnson has been valuable before. So I think he does have potential. I don't really like to go back to him as this soon, but I think
Yeah,
later down the road, he's definitely going to work more and more onto this offense.
yeah, I think so too. I feel like on the other side, on the Raiders side, that I'm kind of guessing at wide receiver, that it's not as clear cut as Chicago, that, there's one place where all the volume's going and that we can depend on that. We've got Trey Tucker, who I don't think he repeats his 43-point week.
Yeah.
But I don't know if Brock Bowers steps up and takes over that role or who it's going to be. If we see more Jacoby Myers, anything could happen on that side. So I'm a little bit more on the Chicago side because I feel like it's more clearly defined, but that also gives you opportunity to go right back to that Raiders side. Do you think, though, on the Raiders side, I've been waiting for Ashton Genty. I was all over Genty in the preseason, and I've been super disappointed in him this year. Do you think that he could be a good play this week on this slate? Is there any game script where you see the Raiders going up early, maybe on something defensive, and then doing a lot more running the ball, but his yards per attempt have just been...
He could, but the reason why he actually could against the Chicago front is because Chicago's yards before contact, so when they're actually getting their hand on the running back, has been one of the worst in the league so far. And that's been Genty's problem. He's getting hit in the backfield and just stuffed immediately. For him to get any yards, he's basically having to break a tackle at the line of scrimmage before he can even go. So if he's actually getting a lane against a bad rushing defense for Chicago, then he can start to get going and get those explosive plays. Right now he's turning 0-yard plays into like 3 or 4. And so now can you turn those 5-yard plays into those 20 and start getting those chunks?
Maybe this is the game we've been waiting for Genty to, catch on fire and be there. So I don't want to be late to that party. I've been waiting for it. I'm probably going to have Genty in some of my lineups, even if we're paying up somewhere else. I like having Genty here. DraftKings also dropped him $500. So he's one of the bigger drops that we saw this week because they aren't thinking he's going to step up and do it. To go along with the Bears defense, they are allowing the second most yards per attempt at 5.5.
Yeah.
That would give him it would give Genty a lot of help in there. Then if we can just get him into the end zone, he more than pays for it.
You have a stoppable force versus a movable object. We'll see what is actually going to give, but I like that Ashton Genty is going to have some explosive games this year and give me a team that is second worst in yards per carry. So they're going to try to get him going.
They hopefully they will. Let's move on. We've got New Orleans at Buffalo. New Orleans 0-3, Buffalo 3-0. Obviously, Buffalo is favored by 16.5. Over-under's 47.5, with, I'm assuming, Buffalo scoring most of those points.
Yeah, they're implied for 32 points. So not many left over for the Saints. We might see a lot of garbage time. I mean, the Saints game against Seattle, I felt like I looked up. I didn't see that game at all, and I looked up, and it was like 28-3. They were like dead in the water in the first quarter.
They definitely were. Yeah, it was a painful game to watch. They did let Spencer Rattler throw, but it still didn't translate into many fantasy points. I was kind of hoping it would. That was one of my fun games last week, but it just didn't happen. Do you like having any parts of this game, Josh Allen? I don't like Josh Allen because I got to pay up for him, and he's not going to be pushed to score points, although he was pushed to score more than I thought he was going to be last week against Miami.
Yeah, I don't really like Allen. I don't really like Coleman. The one piece that I do like is James Cook. I think if they actually hit that 32 points, he's going to be a crucial part of it. He's looked really good on the ground too. I thought really after missing some training camp with the contract negotiation, he would get off to a slower start, but he is not. He has looked like extremely explosive and one of the best backs so far. And at 7,100 home, almost 17-point favorites, I think he is a great play.
He probably is. I did like Olave. Chris Olave had 14 targets last week. He's probably going to get 14 more targets this week. He didn't get into the end zone, but at 5,100 and getting that kind of volume, he's not an awful play for a wide receiver position either.
Yeah, DraftKings is PPR, so those 10 receptions help even if they only give you 57 yards.
Exactly. Anything else that you like out of this?
I have like Kincaid's usage. It's a little promising, and he's still only 4,500. I don't think you have to go to him, but especially in this game where they're not going to have to do a lot, but he is a switch option.
How about Alvin Kamara for the Saints? The DraftKings dropped him $200. It was obvious that even when the Saints are down, they just keep running a lot of plays. So we still saw 18 rushing attempts out of Kamara last week. And the Bills are last in yards allowed at 6.24 per rush. Is that because, I mean, do they just not care if you run the ball? That's not how you're going to catch up and beat them. So they let you do that, or can they not defend the rush?
Yeah, exactly. There's not a lot of teams going to stick with the rush against the Bills because there's so much pressure to keep up on every drive. We have to get a touchdown. We have to keep pace with Josh Allen. And so not a lot of teams rush heavy against them. We saw Baltimore crush them on the ground until they collapsed later. But then the Jets and Miami kind of gave up on the run in the
Yeah.
second half. So we did see that Kamara is going to be part of the offense regardless of what they're doing. He's either going to catch off dump passes, and when they do run, it's going to be Kamara. So I like him as a pivot option in this game and just his utilization for this Saints team.
Yeah, I don't mind him either, but that's about it.
Yeah.
All right, so we move on to Jacksonville at San Francisco. Jacksonville's 2-1 and the 49ers are 3-0. I'm a little surprised there, especially given all of the injuries that the 49ers have going. 49ers are 3-point favorites and the over-under is 47. We might get Brock Purdy back this week, but Mac Jones has been doing okay, but he kind of got banged up as well in the game, so I guess they're going to duke it out over who's got worse injuries and who gets to play this week. And then we have Trevor Lawrence, who seems to be stalled.
Yeah. And with him, his wide receivers. So we'll see if they can get going too. I do like a couple pieces here. I think Purdy is looking good to play on this week, which is an upgrade. They were asking a lot from Purdy, and they can maybe take a load off of CMC too, because they have just been giving him an insane amount of touches. He's on pace for more touches than he's ever had in a season so far. So they just can't continue to do that.
That's crazy.
Any
Yeah.
interest in Trevor Lawrence? I mean, for stacking, just
No,
because we know the talent, but he just has not been there yet.
it hasn't been there. And I don't think this is the game, even though the 49ers defense took a big hit when they lost Nick Bosa this week. Maybe the 49ers are going to have to score some more points, but the Jacksonville defense has played pretty well as well. I
Hmm.
just feel like this is a game that's destined to hit the under.
Yeah, I agree. I really like Jacksonville's front seven too. They've been getting pretty consistent pressure, and especially if Purdy wasn't that mobile to begin with, but if he's even limited in that capacity, then it could be a very easy sack for Jacksonville. Very easy for them to get after the quarterback. The only one that I'm kind of interested is a couple of the wide receivers. I feel like Pearsall is just permanently underpriced. He's at 5,700 and he has like 280 yards this season. So he's averaging almost 100 yards per game, and that's been carried over from last season. Do you like Pearsall at 5,700?
I do. I think Pearsall, until he gets to 6K, I'm pretty much just slotting him into all of my lineups. When he gets to 6K and he's got to go over 25 points, I'm not so sure. Or when things change on this 49er offense, which we may see this week. And that is one of the things. He's right now, Pearsall is in my lineups, but I want to keep an eye on how things are going to shake out this week for the 49ers. So the 49ers are getting Demarcus Robinson back from his 3-week suspension. And he was a favorite of Purdy's during training camp. So we need to see what that's going to do. And then Juwan Jennings, his return is also getting talked about a little bit more. So if we get two wide receivers back in this mix, I might sit out a week trying to figure out how they're going to balance it. Or maybe they're going to take a little bit away from McCaffrey, because McCaffrey last week, he had 15 targets and 10 receptions.
Yeah.
And he rushed the ball 17 times.
That's a ridiculous workload. I think there is room for these wide receivers to step up, especially with no George Kittle. Oh, you probably aren't going to have all of them come through. I think Pearsall still is that lead number one, and I'm fine going with them at 5,700.
I am too. Okay.
The one name I did want to bring up for Jacksonville, it's not Brian Thomas Jr. We're not going back there, even though his air yards say he should be a great option, but it's actually Parker Washington. And the only reason I'm bringing up Parker Washington, he's a third-year player, but he has been the wide receiver 3 so far. He's kind of been switching in and out with Diami Brown. And Diami Brown has been hurt through practices this week. And it was actually announced Liam Cohen was asked about would Travis Hunter step into Diami Brown's role if he were to miss. And Liam Cohen said no. He's going to play the flanker role. Parker Washington would be the full-time outside wide receiver in that case. So he's been really good on a per route run basis. If he's on the field for more snaps, especially at 3,700, he saw what do you have last week? He had 11 targets last week. He just didn't come down with a lot of those, so he didn't get priced up.
Yeah, he only came down with 4 of those. So if he learns to actually catch the ball, or it's a little more on target, I didn't watch a whole lot of that game. That was kind of a snoozer game. Then maybe he is more involved, but they were definitely throwing to him. So yeah, Parker Washington can be a cheap option that we may want to go to at 3,700.
Yeah, I agree.
Targets for someone at 3,700.
I am interested in a couple of these options, mainly because of the pace they play. This is projected to be the highest pace. Actually, this game and the Saints Buffalo are kind of the highest pace games of the week. I think it's intriguing for trying to pick a wide receiver option here.
That's, yeah, very interesting. We'll see if they do. I want to lean towards that the Jaguars don't have a fast pace, but
Yeah.
Trevor Lawrence threw it 40 times last week.
Yeah.
Apparently, my
Still a lot into the dirt.
Perception is gone, is wrong.
No, I was surprised by that.
All right, let's move on to Washington Commanders at the Atlanta Falcons. Favorite is Washington by 1.5. Over under is 45. Watching the Falcons lose last week to the Panthers 30-0, and not just lose, but get shut out. That was crazy. It was just unbelievable. I have no idea why the Falcons were like, yeah, we've got our top running back, and the Panthers have allowed all sorts of crazy yards on the ground. Nah, we're going to go out throwing the ball. That's our best game plan. What came out of that was the firing of the wide receiver coach and the change. Zach Robinson as their offensive coordinator, and he was told to come back down out of that box and come to the sidelines because Raheem Morris thought that the communication was broken, which is kind of puzzling to me because you've got a second-year quarterback and you're not talking to him. You're not communicating with him on the sideline because you're sitting up in the box. This just seems like there's so much wrong here that I think I'm just going to stay away from it. It all just kind of smells on the Falcons side that something's wrong. And I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into it in the firing of the wide receiver coach, but it sounds like they weren't running the correct routes, and that was part of Michael Penix Jr.'s problem and why he was at a 50% completion rate.
Yeah, I'm putting a lot of blame on Penix. He just did not look good in that game, and a couple inexcusable turnovers too. And it was weird because it's like you're looking at the box score and it's like they outgained the Panthers. They had more first downs than the Panthers. They had more passing yards. They had more rushing yards, I think. And they got shut out 30-0. And the only way you can possibly do that is with key turnovers. We'll see if Penix can bounce back. I don't think I am interested at all to stack him. He doesn't really run too much to begin with. So I am out for stacking him, but I still kind of like Drake London just to bring along because 5,700 and he has 27 targets for the year. And I like London as a talent, but who are we getting?
I like him as a talent, but I'm just going to toss Raheem Morris into the ring of first coach that might get fired. I really thought it was going to be McDaniel and for the Dolphins, but Morris is pushing it here and trying to be first, I think. Something's wrong there, so I'm just going to stay away. London's talented. Bijan is talented, but they're also expensive, and I just feel like something's wrong that they've got to figure out for the Falcons.
This is the Washington team, though, that we did see just get burned by Trey Tucker. So they play a lot of man coverage. It's actually going to be one of the biggest difference. Carolina is very zone heavy and Washington is very man heavy as far as what they call in their coverage scheme. So Drake London typically is the best wide receiver that the Falcons have against man coverage. So I think if he does have a bounce back, here's the spot to do it. But it would be a lot of trust in their young quarterback to, after the game like he had in week 3, to immediately say, go air it out.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I think I stay away from this game. I also don't like that it looks like Terry McLaurin isn't going to play. I don't know what's going to happen with Jaden Daniels, if he's going to play or not. If both of them are out, we get more Marcus Mariota running.
I do think at least the Vegas line is saying that they think Daniels is playing. I don't think they would make the Commanders road favorites without him. He probably will be limited on his like scrambles too, if he is playing.
30 to nothing
Yeah.
against the Panthers gets you not favored even at home, no matter who you're playing the next week. Should we move on, or is there anyone else to talk about here?
No, Drake London's about the only piece I'm interested in here.
Everything else just gets so murky. We don't know who's going to run for Washington. Terry McLaurin is injured. No one else
Yeah.
is showing his whole lot. So let's just move on. Next, we have Cleveland at Detroit. Detroit's favored by 9. Over-under's 44.5. Cleveland's coming off the big win against the Green Bay Packers that was pretty impressive. Do you like either of the quarterbacks here with Jared Goff or Joe Flacco?
I do not. Joe Flacco might get some garbage like time and he might like have some high volume. I don't think you can really trust either of these quarterbacks. I really have a lot of respect for these defenses. They look so good last week in both their dominant wins. So I think Cleveland is also getting a little disrespected. They just beat Green Bay and they're now 9-point underdogs. And this defense is going to keep them in a lot of games they shouldn't be.
It definitely is. That's my favorite bet, I think, right now is taking the Browns in 9 points.
Mm-hmm.
But that's our other show. Anyhow, I think the problem here comes in when the Lions can't run the ball and they become very one-dimensional. It doesn't usually go well for them.
Yeah. I think they are going to have to try to lean into the play action passes. And the one piece that we've seen teams attack the Cleveland defense was Baltimore and just kind of getting over the top on some play action looks. So that would kind of lean itself to Jameson Williams. And we haven't seen him really pop off for a game yet. It's been, I mean, Amon-Ra has had great games, but Jameson Williams has just been limited involvement. And we know that he has the ability to kind of get over the top on any defense. If they are pushing it, they realize that Gibbs, Montgomery isn't really working. I think they also could attack the space with Gibbs and just like screen passes and basically say, we're giving up on the run game, but go stop Gibbs on the outside. But
that's definitely what they would need to do. I think so. So they'll probably have that drawn up, but I don't see Gibbs hitting the numbers he needs to pay for his $7,700 price tag.
I agree.
How about Quentin Judkins? He seems to be the Browns' number 1 running back, and he is getting the carries. Do you like him at 5,500?
He looks good too. I'm not taking him in this game. We just saw what Detroit did to Derrick Henry and keeping him in check. I think there's better options. I'm not too interested in Quinshon Judkins, but I think he's looked very good. So I'm interested in watching this game. The one piece I am interested in for Cleveland is Harold Fannin. I just think as a tight end, PPR, and he's a pretty cheap option. So he can definitely just pay off what's his price tag? His price tag is at 3,700. So I mean, it doesn't take that much to pay off that price.
Yeah, I like him too. But for the most part, I'm out on that game. Let's go on to the Los Angeles Chargers at the New York Giants. Chargers are favored by 6.5, over under of 44. I'm strangely excited to watch this game, but I think that's all because we're going to finally get to see Jackson Dart, and maybe Malik Neighbors is going to be consistent. He cost me my fantasy matchup last week with his 3.5 points or so. Do you like any of the quarterbacks here? Well, I guess we'll just go Justin Herbert and Jackson Dart. We'll assume that Russell Wilson is going to stay on the sidelines, or maybe he'll be the inactive one this week. Do you like either of them?
Jackson Dart was interesting because I saw what his rushing line was set for in this first week, and it was 35 yards. So they do think he's going to scramble a little bit more in this Giants offense. But there's no way I can trust him against a Chargers defense that has just been giving quarterbacks hell all season long. And it is just a brutal matchup to throw him out against for his debut. So I can't go there. I like Herbert. He's just looked so good all season. I think he's third in MVP betting right now. They're going to continue airing it out. His weapons are amazing, and he's looked really good.
Yeah, I have some interest in Justin Herbert, but I'm probably going to the other games. But I'm super excited to see what we get in Jackson Dart. He was just energy on the sidelines during preseason. And now we get to see him and Cam Scatterbo. So the two of them together, we ought to have some pretty good clips that are hilarious on Monday morning from this game. Whether or not it translates into fantasy points, I don't know. I I, I may have to do a Jackson Dart lineup. The one thing that, sticks in my head is we always have that quarterback that no one that hasn't played and he pops in during a season and no one has any answer for him and they go off and Jackson Dart could be it.
I think his biggest disadvantage is that he was kind of raw, and where he played at Ole Miss does not translate a lot to the professional setting. But I do kind of like him for those deeper passes, even though Russ was taking those shots. I kind of like him with like Darius Slayton, and Darius Slayton to have his like signature 100-yard game that he has twice a season here at the spot, especially if they have to come back. I think they're going to be down for most of this game.
Yeah, maybe, we get some dark magic and it's worth a shot on the tournament lineup to see if, Dart and Slayton and maybe even Neighbors. And then we can bring it back with Hampton, Omarion Hampton. Let's talk about Omarion Hampton because he's now it for
He
the
is.
Chargers. Just when I was getting frustrated and trying to trade running backs, Najee Harris tears his Achilles, and it's all Omarion Hampton, and that was really exciting to see last week.
Yeah, I
Do you
mean,
like him?
with a full workload, I do, and I think part of the biggest reason is he was catching a lot more passes than I thought. He's not just being used as this like ground and pound. He is being used just as a weapon, and they're bringing him out in space and trying to give him open looks. He's looked really good throughout the season. Whenever he's been in space, he's just gotten stuffed
Yeah.
at the line a bunch. So I like him at a 5,900 price tag, being the basically the sole back. I
Do you, do you see this game? Can the Giants play the same kind of defense that we saw the Chargers have to play the Broncos last week? Can the Giants push this team the same way and repeat these numbers to where Omarion Hampton is getting 25 points?
The Chargers have just kind of shown that they want to keep their foot on the gas, and I think Hampton can. I'm more interested in the wide receiving options here between Lad Johnston and Keenan Allen. So far, it's been Keenan Allen and Quentin Johnston, and Lad McConkey's been kind of forgotten. But that's basically just from a fantasy perspective. The defenses are still respecting Lad. They still treat him as the number one. And part of the reason why he's been disappointing is because he's getting blanketed by Surtain and he's getting followed by a cornerback one.
Yeah.
So I think if we start seeing these defenses being like, oh, we might actually have to cover Johnston and Allen and like take them seriously as threats, then it might open up McConkey and Hampton to actually get going with more space.
I had a lot of Lad McConkey last weekend. I thought that was going to be his breakout weekend. Maybe I was just a week too early and I need to be playing him this weekend instead
Yeah.
and put him in some of these lineups because his day's coming. I feel like he will bounce back and this game could be it. I'm excited about this game. I'm not sure that I should be. Let's go on to the Philadelphia Eagles at Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Philly's favored by 3.5. That's a lot to be away and be favored by 3.5 points.
Yeah.
And the Eagles exactly haven't looked that great. Over unders 44. Do you like this game at all, or is this all screaming because the Buccaneers have lost Mike Evans for a few weeks? And
Man,
what
yeah.
is
The Buccaneers are just limping into this game. They've been very fortunate to be 3-0. It's very impressive what they've done with all the injuries. I mean, with Wirfs gone and Godwin not playing, but now you also lose Mike Evans, and I think they're just kind of running out of options. So I don't know if they're actually going to be able to hang with Philly if we get that second half Eagles team that just remembered they had wide receivers. If they get the
yeah.
first half Eagles team that just wants to keep trying to do tush pushes and get to 4th and 1 and do a tush push to get a first down, then yeah, it should be a 3-point game. But
Well, let's talk about the quarterbacks. Do you want Jalen Hurts or Baker Mayfield in your lineups? Jalen Hurts was worth 30 points last week. He ran it. He had to. So he had a rushing touchdown. And then he was pushed to pass the ball finally. And I guess that's what it all comes down to. If we think he's going to be pushed to pass the ball, then we probably want to be paying up 6,700 for Jalen Hurts. I'm not sure that I need to pair him with any of his wide receivers with the way things are this week and guess who it's going to be. But both of them did well last week. I don't know. After what we've seen, having 2 weeks in a row where they just bounce back and they're back to, 2 years ago doesn't seem likely.
Yeah, I like AJ Brown and just maybe say, I mean, this is a brand new offensive coordinator. This is the first time of him calling plays. Maybe it's going to take for him to watch their game film and be like, oh, wow, AJ Brown's really good. It works if we just give him the ball. So kind of like him for that aspect. I think if you're taking the shot with Hurts, you need AJ Brown to come along because, like you said, he's not going to pay off that price strictly on the ground. He has to start airing it out a little bit more, pushing the ball downfield. So I think if that's going to happen, AJ Brown has to come along with him.
Yeah. The only way this game works is if it goes like last week's game against the Eagles had against the Rams, and that they're both forced to deliver points. But for a large part of that game when the Eagles were losing, it didn't seem like that we were going to get the numbers that we ended up with, and then all of a sudden they caught on fire on the Bucs side, and that's where I think the questions come in is, can the Bucs push them? I think two things can happen for the Buccaneers to win this game, really. And one is the big question of, do we get Chris Godwin back? When I went into the season, I really felt like between Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, I had one wide receiver that was going to be healthy for the year. And that's kind of what it looks is happening right now. So they expect Chris Godwin back this week. They did not put him on the pup list to start the season, which indicated that he would be back before week 5. So that's this week. He's got to be back if that's true. He's too expensive for me in this game, but for the Buccaneers overall, then he needs to be here to push this point total higher. And then I feel like what we saw the Bucs do last year when they were down wide receivers, and this isn't the first time they've had to play without all their wide receivers. They just thought that they brought enough in that it was going to be different this year. But we saw that they passed a lot to their running backs. So Bucky Irving, Rachaad White. Do we see more Rachaad White this weekend? And he's what? He's 4,900. So he's still a little bit up there, but I feel like we could see more Rachaad White. We'll see more Bucky Irving. And then we'll see more Sterling Shepard, which we also saw last weekend.
Yeah, I think that's a good call because they're also having some key injuries on their offensive line. So that ball has to come out quick. And so you're just going to see, I think you're going to see a lot of the Eagles defense working together and having like pretty good coverage against some banged up wide receiver core and quick pressure, which just means the only option is those quick outlet passes to the running backs.
Yeah.
So I think, especially in a PPR, Bucky and Rachaad White are definitely good plays.
Yeah, I think they're worth taking a chance on. But that's it. Let's move on to Carolina at New England. A couple 1 and 2 teams. New England is favored by 5.5. Over/unders 43.5. Wow, you win a game 30-0, and you're
5.5 point underdogs.
5.5 point underdogs to the Patriots. There's a surprise.
Yeah, and the Patriots, I mean, they lost a bad game against the Steelers. They had a lot of turnovers, but Drake Mays actually looked pretty good, I think, early on in the season. I think he's been a promising bit that maybe they can pull together later on.
Yeah, I like Drake May in this game. So if I am stacking anybody, it's going to be Drake May with somebody else, or maybe just taking Drake May and counting on his rushing ability against the Panthers.
Yeah.
So I do like him. He's only 5,500. I'm going to still stay away from Bryce Young. Bryce Young didn't have to do very much last weekend against the Falcons because his defense did everything.
Yeah, and I saw T-Mac missed practice too for an injury.
Yeah.
He's about their only guy left. He's about their only main target. It's really, until they get healthier on their wide receiving core, until they start getting Coker back, and if T-Mac's fully healthy, I'm not touching Bryce Young.
Yeah, they also lost Jatavian Sanders last weekend with an ankle injury, so he's going to miss a couple games as well. The Panthers are definitely hurting, and T-Mac didn't even see his normal receptions last weekend. He only saw 8 targets and he only caught 3 of them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm off of the Panthers side a little bit, but maybe I should I don't know.
But the thing with the Patriots defense too is you can't really run against them. They're 4th in the league as far as EPA per rush, but they're 30th in the league for EPA per pass. So it's not really lining up just with the injuries that Carolina has. I don't think they can really stay competitive in this game, which might mean that New England just gets to run a lot against a bad Carolina defense. And Travion Henderson has his
Let's
opportunity.
let's talk about that running game. So last weekend, Ramondre Stevenson had been the top back, and then Antonio Gibson, and then Travion Henderson, which was kind of maddening for me because I really liked Travion and thought he was going to be their running back. And then it all went bad for Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson. Between the two of them, they combined for 3 fumbles, and all of a sudden we got to see Henderson come in and he had a good game finally.
Yeah. And it's going to be one of those things where he's too talented that once he gets the opportunity, he's not going to let go. So it's just when is he actually going to get the opportunity? I was seeing clips of him doing drills and he was taking the lead reps. So it's random practice clips, but maybe I think this would be a great opportunity. If you want to make him the lead back, get him in a game that you're going to be ahead and he can just run all over the Panthers.
Yeah, I think this is it. So I'm in on Travion Henderson. They dropped his price $200. I think maybe he gets to the opportunity finally because the other two have messed up, and maybe he now gets to see what he can do.
And it's kind of a
Um,
common theme where we're talking last week about these rookies and we're waiting for these rookies. We finally saw Hampton join the party, and now it's like, all right, Ashton Genty, Travion Henderson, who's next to join and actually show out that they're worth their pick?
yeah, exactly. So the rookies are definitely breaking out. Anyone else you want in that game, or shall we move on to our last game?
I just want to bring up Hunter Henry. He is currently the tight end one. I feel like no one talks about him. He is getting,
I was trying to move on.
yeah, he has 2 targets less than McBride, one more than Bowers. I feel like we've actually liked him a fair amount, and I want to keep going with him. I mean, he's been a great option. He's going to be involved in this passing attack, and I think he is the reliable number one option for since I don't have that clear alpha in the wide receiver room.
Yeah, I agree. I love Hunter Henry, and they only bumped him up $200. He's now a at 4K. He had 29 fantasy points last week. If he gets, one of the touchdowns and misses another one, then he
Yeah,
still pays for himself. He's great
exactly.
value here. All right, let's move on to the last game. Tennessee Titans at the Houston Texans. Somebody's going to get a win because they're both 0 and 3. Um, Houston is favored by 7 and the over under is 38.5. This game's like really bad and the Titans are making changes. Callahan's going to give play calling over to somebody else cuz I guess he realizes he's so bad at it.
Yeah, and he can focus on learning the rule book and maybe read up on those that he was struggling with in week 1, but I think this game's going to be ugly. I think you're going to see a lot of defense. Tennessee's defense has actually looked not too bad, and Houston's defense has been impressive even though they're 0-3. But I did want to point out a stat that I was looking it up, CJ Stroud, cuz I kind of was going through the wide receivers and I was like, I like Nico and I think Christian Kirk is a good value, so like maybe a Stroud stack is possible. It has been almost a calendar year since CJ Stroud has had 20 fantasy points in a game. It was week 4 last year. So there's no way I can take a shot on that, even against Tennessee. And I kind of ruled out the other wide receivers and kind of made me just hate this game even more.
Yeah, anytime you kind of dig into this game, you're like, no, no, I'm not doing this. They're just better teams and better players, better situations on other teams. I really like Nico. I feel like he's got, he's it. They go to Nico, but he's also coming with the 7,400 price tag, and I don't really like that. I don't know that they get pushed to score lots of points in this game. I think you're right. It just hits the 38 points, and it's kind of a stinker.
Yeah, I like the Texans defense, and then I'm probably going to hop out.
Yeah, there you go. Some defense. All right, let's talk lineups. My favorite is Caleb Williams with Romo Odunze. And I like Cole Kmet, assuming that Loveland doesn't play. I don't know that we really talked about that, but with the injury to Loveland, if he sits out, then I would jump all over Cole Kmet at 3K. I'm not sure how you're feeling about that. So I like those paired together. And then I'm going to go back to Ashton Genty, just like we talked about. I'm going to put in Omarion Hampton. I do have Nico Collins in here, but I may be swapping him out. There are lots of swaps that you can do in this lineup that I've been playing with. So Nico's probably one of those where I don't know that he can pay for himself. So maybe he's better off with swapping with somebody else. I've also got Ricky Pearsall and Quentin Judkins in here. And then going with the Bills. I like the Bills defense if you want to pay up against New Orleans. And then if you don't want to pay up, I do like the Browns defense against the Lions.
Yeah, and they're 2,200, and I
Yeah.
think people would agree that they're like the best defense in football right now. So 2,200, you can always get that value.
Yeah, I don't think that the Lions get to go crazy all over them, and they probably get enough sacks and points otherwise. Maybe not the 30 that we saw from the Vikings though last week.
Yeah, it's true. I kind of took a similar route in my build, so I also targeted that Chicago Las Vegas game and was stacking Williams up with Odunze and Burden, and just going back, DJ Morris, he has not been heavily involved in that passing attack, so I'm kind of buying that Burden's that
Yeah.
slot receiver. He's going to get worked in more, and then taking Brock Bowers. I just think that he's going to be kind of overlooked. He hasn't really performed, and he was on that list that I think he will bounce back. He is a tremendous talent. For running backs, I wanted to pay up and get James Cook as a 17-point favorite against New Orleans at home. And then Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry against the Chiefs. He is kind of due. I think he's going to have some angry runs after a couple bad losses. To
He's
complement those
fumbled it
pieces, he
every
has.
game. I know.
Yeah.
He's got to get it through a game without fumbling it.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to have 17 fumbles for the year. I think it'll work out. So I am calling that, have him in my lineup. And then I want a couple pieces of that Jacksonville San Francisco game. So I'm pairing Parker Washington with Ricky Pearsall, and finally rounding it out with the Texans defense.
All right. There's lots of swaps in there too, but I think we're pretty much all over that Caleb Williams stack for sure. I do like it with Genty in there. I think maybe this is his week. Anyhow, that's all for week 4 main slate. Hope you enjoyed our game review and rundown. Hit subscribe and leave us a comment with your favorite stacks and plays of the week. And don't forget, we've got a 9:30 game on Sunday in Ireland, so get up early and make sure you watch part of that. Till next time.